Apparently, many humans absolutely refuse to acknowledge obvious patterns when they're inconvenient. It's like when you have a friend who incessantly and repeatedly dates exactly the same type of high maintenance drama person, every time confidently letting you know that this one's different. They're really not unlike our little aquatic friend, the lobster, playing little lobster games on the floor of the ocean. It sees one of those warm, cozy, and inviting caves with all the tiny windows all over the sides, full of that delicious, sweet, rotting fish. It knows the stories about lobsters never returning from these types of caves, but the cave is too enticing. Surely this time it'll be safe enough. Its only thoughts are about that delicious, sweet smell of the rotting fish in the cave, right up until the moment it's hoisted up to the boat and it realizes it was a lobster trap all along. Unfortunately, it's also lobster season right now in crypto. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss the lobster harvest that's been kicked off by the FTX Alameda implosion. We don't know how big this is going to be. Some of our favorite Ethereum personalities getting called out very hard. Crypto.com and a giant mistake. A Carda station treasure hunt. IOG's ScotFest. And the Cardano Summit. If you are that lobster that wisely refused to enter the trap, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the army of spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Well, guys, throughout the history of this channel, one of the biggest themes has been commentary about the dangers of lobster traps, how they look like warm caves, and your little lobster ducats, your little lobster monies playing little lobster games on the ocean floor, they can smell a yield inside those caves. They look like caves, only there are all these little windows on the sides. Your little lobster ducats want to go in there. Your little lobster monies want to go in there because they think they can get a yield. But if you let them go in there, if you let them pursue that yield inside that cave, it might not be a cave. And one day the fishermen might come along and hoist that lobster trap up onto their boat, and you'll never see your monies again. So it's much better just let your little lobster ducats play little lobster games out on the ocean floor. Let them roam free. Don't deposit them anywhere. Don't put them inside any cave at all, even if there's a delicious, delicious smell of bait fish yields inside that cave. Don't pursue those yields. There's always something wrong. We have in crypto is not unlike any other financial system anywhere. There are always these yields that seem to exist. I'll put it that way. They seem to exist that are outsized and seem too good to be true. It's amazing we have to use this cliche term. It seems too good to be true, but the old cliche has always been true. That if something seems to be too good to be true, then it is. It's not true. It is too good to be true. The same is true in crypto as anywhere else. These outsized yields, people never stop to ask themselves, where are these coming from? And a lot of times the projects, they have some explanation of where these outsized yields are coming from. They might tell you about how they're, unbelievably talented and intelligent, quants are taking that money and trading it, or they're lending it out to unbelievably and talented and intelligent people who are doing some trading, or they've got some new angle that allows them to create these outsized rewards, but it seems to never actually be true. The story is always that somehow they're the ones who are the gatekeepers to some kind of extra efficient allocation of your capital, either they have access to very smart people who can do better things with your money, or they have some kind of relationship or some kind of knowledge of a special market or something. But there's always some story about how this is just a more efficient allocation of your capital, and somehow it's producing these outsized yields that outperform the market. And at the end of the day, it always turns out they're just doing degen stuff. That seems to always be the case. If that's not the case, it's because they're doing Ponzi stuff. It's always one of those two things. They're doing super risky degen stuff, or it's just a Ponzi scheme. And sometimes it's this sequential combination of both. Maybe they start out during a bull market doing very risky degen stuff, and it's working out great. And then the market swings. It's no longer a bull market where all the risks seem to pay off somehow. It becomes a bear market, and all of a sudden, none of the risks pay off. And the only way for them to recover is to accidentally, on purpose, allow it to become a Ponzi scheme, bring in new investors to pay off the old investors, and even newer investors to pay off those investors. Sometimes it's a combination of the two. But what we've noticed in crypto, and this is kind of true everywhere else too, whenever you have this outsized outperformance of the market, a yield beyond what anybody else in the market can provide, it always seems to either be the super risky stuff or the Ponzi story. It always seems to be one of those two things. The thing they have in common is that both of those always result in the users having to wave goodbye to their little lobster ducats as the trap gets hoisted up onto the boat, because they know they'll never see their monies again. It's important to note here that the whole point is that you can't really identify the lobster traps from the non-lobster traps ahead of time. You can't really tell. And that's why you can't trust yourself to go around making the decision. I'm going to lock my funds up here. I'm going to deposit my funds over here, because it turns out people can't tell. We humans, we can't tell which ones are the lobster traps and which ones aren't, because there's too much of an information asymmetry. The people creating the lobster traps, they know. Like, I assume Sam Bankman-Fried knew a lot of things about what was going on at FTX and Alameda that you and I did not. He knew, but we don't know. We never have access to that information until it all blows up like now. That's why you pretty much just shouldn't deposit any of your funds anywhere. In crypto, think about that for a second. In crypto, you probably shouldn't deposit any funds anywhere. It seems to always blow up. Maybe if you have to use a public exchange like Kraken or Coinbase as a fiat on and off ramp, maybe you get in, get out as quickly as possible. In fact, in a Twitter space today, Jesse Powell of Kraken suggested the same. He said, hey, you might have to use an exchange like Kraken, here and there to do certain things. But the rest of the time, you should be keeping your funds on a hardware wallet. Think about that for a second. Even the founder of Kraken is telling you not to leave your funds on centralized exchanges. If you do not have a hardware wallet, there's a link below in the description box. It's an affiliate link. That means I get a small commission if you buy a ledger through that link. But if you don't have a hardware wallet, please buy one. You can buy a ledger through that link. But it doesn't have to be a ledger. You can buy any hardware wallet. But please buy a hardware wallet. If you have any sizable amount of funds you would care about losing, do not keep them anywhere. Don't deposit them anywhere. Just break down, buy that ledger, put it on your hardware wallet, and be safe. You can skip all of this. Even the founder of one of the biggest exchanges is telling you that's what you should do. Don't deposit your funds anywhere. I think we can say that, blanket. Nothing is safe anymore. Here we see a post from BlockFi. They say, we are shocked and dismayed by the news regarding FTX and Alameda. We, like the rest of the world, found out about this situation through Twitter. Given the lack of clarity on the status of FTX.com, FTX US, and Alameda, we are not able to operate business as usual. Our priority has been and will continue to be to protect our clients and their interests. Until there is further clarity, we are limiting platform activity, including pausing client withdrawals. Can you hear that? That creaking sound and then that thud? That is the trap door closing. That's the door closing behind you so you cannot exit. There's no way out. Client withdrawals are paused. There is no way out now. The door is closed. Even BlockFi. And now we can look at it in retrospect and say to ourselves, of course you shouldn't have been depositing your funds at a centralized entity like BlockFi. But that's not what people were saying very, very recently. If you look back at the histories of some of your favorite influencers in crypto, a great many of them were getting paid to promote BlockFi. They were telling you it was a good idea to use BlockFi. Not so much in the Cardano space. I think Cardano influencers have been pretty good at not promoting centralized things. There's probably exceptions, but I think Cardano people, Cardano YouTubers, Cardano commentators have done much better. Not so much the case in the larger crypto scene. Outside of Cardano, it's a very different story with Ethereum, Solana, or other influencers. Not only do you find them very often promoting BlockFi or at least one of its competitors that are also centralized, but amazingly, the more they talk about decentralization, the more they talk about disintermediating the bankers, the more they say that decentralization, disintermediating banks is of the utmost importance, the more often and the more consistently they seem to be promoting these projects like BlockFi. It's like they'll do these videos and they'll talk about how the most important thing is decentralization. We must disintermediate the banks. These are the most important things. At the same time, they will happily direct you to their list of best crypto deals. And you go down the list and you always find BlockFi or one of its competitors. How they square those two propositions, their seeming love of decentralization and the ideal of disintermediating banking institutions with their promotion of something like BlockFi, I don't know. Speaking of Ethereum influencers, this one decided to vent some frustration at crypto Twitter recently, saying, classic crypto, pitchforks out for the wrong people. This place is so toxic sometimes. And he proceeded to get ratioed super hard by our own Steak with Pride, who said, did someone say toxic pitchforks? And then he posted this video of that person's co-host on their podcast using the words scam and Ponzi to describe Cardano. And the ratio was pretty significant. The original post got 590 likes. Steak with Pride scored 1,337. It was pretty clear. It was pretty clear where the public was on this. The same podcast was also brutally but rightfully mocked for trying to distance themselves from Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX when not too long ago, just back in March, it looks like, based on this screenshot, they did a podcast with Sam Bankman-Fried with the FTX logo flying proud over here. And this note down in the description box. After this discussion, we are increasingly convinced of the alignment between Bankless and SBF. The same podcast was taken to task to the tune of those numbers right there, 2,500 likes, over 200 quote retweets, and almost 400 retweets for their promotion of Nexo, despite all of their attempts to espouse the ideals of crypto in their content. Meanwhile, reports also surfaced that Crypto.com had accidentally sent $400 million worth of Ether to the wrong address and then received some overwhelming portion of it back. The CEO of Crypto.com said it was supposed to be a move to a new cold storage address, but was sent to a whitelisted external exchange address. They worked with the Gate.io team. Apparently, that's where it was accidentally sent. And the funds were subsequently returned to Crypto.com. They say new process and features to be implemented to prevent this from happening in the future. But of course, this was probably the worst possible time and probably didn't engender a lot of confidence in Crypto.com. Meanwhile, in Cardano, it seems like it's only fun things for us to look forward to this week. Carda Station is having a treasure hunt inside their metaverse. So this treasure hunt will have started long before you see this video. But last time I checked, only 2 people had won the treasure hunt so far, and there are spots for 10 winners. So if you're interested, I would go and check out the Carda Station Discord. Obviously, there are 2 bigger very fun events going down this weekend in Cardano. The first of which is the IOHK ScotFest, the Age of Voltaire. This will be the first one. It's a 2-day virtual event going down November 18th and 19th. So the kickoff event will be at 10 a.m. GMT on November 18th. And then I believe the Charles keynote is going down at something like 2 p.m. GMT. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's 2 p.m. GMT for the Charles keynote. You can check the IOG Twitter account and it'll have all the details. Finally, ScotFest will lead right into the Cardano Summit 2022 on the 19th through 21st. This event will be live in Switzerland and also virtual for all of us elsewhere. You can find a registration link at this post from the Cardano community account. It says, almost time to start the thrilling adventure at the Summit Lodge. And they've got this little promo video, which kind of indicates we might have some kind of a metaverse kind of environment. They might be continuing this history of having a metaverse for the Cardano Summit, which I think would be great. So hopefully, if all goes well and that speculation is correct, we will all find ourselves hanging out virtually at some kind of a beautiful metaverse summit lodge in, I guess, virtual Switzerland. I think that sounds like it could be great. I hope you had a great weekend, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.